The Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Mr. Starmer, stated that he will not give in to pressure for the country to participate in the war with Iran, emphasizing that the conflict does not serve the country's national interests. His statements were made in the House of Commons a few hours after an interview with Donald Trump, who mentioned that the terms of the US-UK trade agreement, which was concluded last year, may be modified. Responding to questions from MPs, Starmer noted that he has come under significant pressure to follow a different political course, adding that the developments of the last few hours have intensified this pressure. "I am not going to change my mind. I will not give in. It is not in our national interest to participate in this war, and we will not do so. I know my position," he said. The British Prime Minister reiterated that the government insists on the policy of non-involvement, emphasizing that this particular conflict is not Britain's war. President Donald Trump leaves open the possibility of reassessing American participation and is considering punitive measures against some allies. He is particularly critical of the allies and partners in NATO for their lack of support in the war with Iran. Donald Trump appeared again during his meeting yesterday with the Secretary General of the alliance, Mark Rutte, the White House, leaving open the possibility of reassessing American participation. A few hours after the talks, Trump returned via Truth Social with harsh rhetoric, claiming that NATO was not there when we needed it and will not be there if we need it again. As Sky reports, according to the White House, the Allies' refusal to support the USA against Iran was a test for NATO, and they failed, with spokesperson Caroline Leavitt stating that American citizens were abandoned, despite Washington's long-standing support for Europe. In any case, the meeting between Trump and Rutte took place behind closed doors, in a particularly tense atmosphere. However, Rutte tried to dispel that impression. In his statements to CNN, he praised Trump's transformative legacy, especially regarding the pressure he put on allies to increase defense spending by 5% of GDP last year. Rutte's approach through flattery-based diplomacy has borne fruit in previous crises, such as the one with Greenland. Although it has been criticized quite a bit, its main purpose is to maintain cohesion within alliances, NATO sources note. However, a complete withdrawal of the USA from NATO is not a simple matter. Legally, Trump cannot proceed unilaterally with such a move without the approval of Congress. At the same time, a report by the Wall Street Journal reveals that the American government is considering alternative scenarios for punishing specific allies. According to the plan, the USA could withdraw troops from countries considered not useful for operations against Iran and deploy them to more friendly ones. At the same time, the possibility of closing an American base, possibly in Spain or Germany, is being considered. The U.S. military forces will remain deployed around Iran until a real agreement is reached and fully upheld, warned President Donald Trump late on Wednesday, amid disagreements and uncertainty regarding the key terms of the ceasefire that were announced a day earlier. The U.S. military forces, with additional ammunition, weapons, and anything else that is appropriate and necessary for the lethal pursuit and destruction of an already essentially degraded enemy, will remain deployed around Iran until a real agreement is reached and upheld, President Trump said late Wednesday amid disagreements. Uncertainty regarding the main strikes was announced a day earlier, and stronger than anyone has ever seen before. The U.S. military forces in Iran were warned by President Trump on Wednesday about the uncertainty regarding the ceasefire that was announced a day earlier. He was pressed on whether it covered Lebanon and whether Iran would be allowed to continue uranium enrichment. Trump stated that the United States accepted Iran's 10-point plan as a basis for negotiations. Iran and Pakistan as mediators. They stated that the ceasefire included a halt to hostilities in all areas, including Lebanon, but both Israel and the United States have publicly disagreed, and Israel has continued to attack its northern neighbor. In response, Iran accused Israel of violating the new agreement and threatened to restrict access to the Strait of Hormuz again. The terms of the ceasefire between Iran and the U.S. are clear. The U.S. must choose between a ceasefire or continuing the war through Israel, said Iran's Foreign Minister Sayed Basharadzi. The opening of the Strait was a stated demand of the U.S. for securing a ceasefire agreement. White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt told reporters during Wednesday's press briefing that what Iran claims publicly is not necessarily what it says to the Trump administration behind closed doors. I will repeat the president's expectation and demand to reopen the Strait of Hormuz immediately, quickly, and safely. That is the expectation, she said. It has been stated privately that this is happening, and these public statements are false.
There was a direct phone call with the Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian on Sunday.
The Russian President Vladimir Putin. The discussion between the two leaders focused on the rapid diplomatic developments, and more specifically, on the recent unsuccessful round of talks between Iran and the United States in Islamabad. According to the Russian news agency Interfax, Moscow is trying to take an active role in the next phase of the negotiations. Vladimir Putin officially conveyed to his Iranian counterpart Russia's intention to act as an official mediator between Washington and Tehran. The stated goal of the Russian intervention is to avoid further escalation and to maintain channels of communication. The news was confirmed a little later through the official channels of the Russian government as well. In its briefing on the content of the phone call, the Kremlin emphasized Moscow's intention to play a decisive role in diffusing the crisis. As stated in the announcement, the Russian president emphasized his complete readiness to further facilitate the search for a political and diplomatic resolution to the conflict. He also made clear his country's intention to actively mediate in efforts to achieve a just and lasting peace in the Middle East. The Russian side appears willing to use its own diplomatic influence to bridge the gap that separated the two sides in Pakistan. In this tense and highly fluid environment, Moscow is making its presence felt, seeking to keep the path of diplomacy open. Thank you for watching us. To be the first to receive all the latest updates, please like and subscribe to our channel